Professor Kelvin Ouma. I'd like to give you the lecture on sovereignty. So, first, I'd like to discuss what sovereignty is, and please, I also beg your attention so that whatever I'm going to teach, you are going to understand it. So first, we are going to look at what is sovereignty, then we'll go on the challenges of sovereignty, and how sovereignty affects our living styles. So first, sovereignty is that way in which a person can give his decisions or the guidelines toward his life internally without external forces. Meaning that sovereignty starts with you, and that for you to choose on what to do, you must be independent so that your decision may be right. So I go straight to the external sovereignty, whereby sovereignty which is external is that on which a state as a whole is able to make a decision or decisions without the influence of external forces. E.g., Kenya can make a decision without the influence of the United States of America, which is the sovereign state on its own. So I'll go straight to the factors or indicators of sovereignty. The indicators of sovereignty are: one, for a state to be sovereign, it must be independent. How? That if the state exists, then sovereignty exists. How? Good example is this. For a state like Kenya, or maybe Uganda, for we to understand that it is sovereign, or that it can make its internal decisions, is whereby the state is able to sign contracts on the external markets or outside the border without the influence of any state. For example, was when Kenya was making a decision to go and sign the trade issues with maybe China, the US, the Russia could not interfere with its objectives to go and sign the contract. Then another one is justice. Justice is a very important indicator for sovereignty, whereby for a state to qualify to be a sovereign state, the citizens of that state should be able to emulate and learn something good from the state, whereby justice and equality is practiced. When it comes to the distribution of resources, the government should ensure that there is no social fragmentation of those, maybe the counties, the provinces, the districts, or even the local trades. So this means that when it comes even to the law, whereby the judge who is giving the verdict should be able to give the verdict that is pleasing and of equal perimeters to the citizen, whereby as the law says that every citizen is equal to the law, and that law is the law of land. So that one is the second one. The third one is the legitimacy of the state, whereby the state should be able to operate in the will of the citizens, whereby the citizens are able to appreciate the ongoing of the state. For example, we see states like Kenya whereby we say that maybe we are sovereign, but there is something to note that Kenya is not a sovereign state because we have a tutelar way of living, a tutelar sovereign, whereby we claim that we are sovereign, but when people see us, we are not sovereign. For example, when Kenya tried to make the decisions on the, maybe let's say something like pulling out of the Amazon in the South Sudan and the Somali deal. So when Kenya tried to do that, we saw that the United States, the China they were saying that Kenya is not does not have the power to pull out because it had already signed the contract. So that shows that Kenya underwent the titular sovereign, that we are claiming that we are sovereign, but for sure things are not that way. The reality is that we are not sovereign, or the minimum requirement for the sovereignty is not yet seen in Kenya because Kenya is still a growing state. Then another one is the charisma of the people or the leaders. The people should be able, or the leaders should be able to be those leaders who are selfless. They don't look at their issues first and then they come to the citizens. They should be able to give citizens their view. Then at the same time, they should be able to promote the state and the coordination of all citizens as one unit without the influence of their personal requirements. Another issue is that for a state to qualify to be sovereign, it should be able to make independent decisions. What do I mean by independent decision? When it comes to the signing of deals, for example, border deals with trade, maybe East African trade border, the states should be able to make their stand without the influence of any other state. For example, back in 1960s, East Africa was to be one state, but due to differences whereby Kenya was ruling that market, it led to the split. And in fact, there was a currency of East Africa, if you don't know, it was there. So that shows how sovereignty is something hard to maintain, but it's still good. So we will need to note that the modern sovereignty is that sovereignty whereby it's controlled by something to do with money, the power, and also prestige of certain states. What do I mean by that? I mean that states like USA, sorry, can you ask a question?
Are you saying that knows the East African currency? Can we see it?
Yeah.
Like even in Google or something like that, and I'll see it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that when it comes to bringing of that one body or sovereign community, there must be something to do with power. For this modern society, there is power. It must be supreme when it comes to the hierarchy. So states like USA, China, Russia, they are the one controlling the sovereignty of other states because they have the resources, they have well-developed army, well-developed technologies, and also when it comes to democracy, they are in front. So they tend to control these other states. Yeah, so those ones were the factors that shows that a state is sovereign. So we will go to factors in the sovereignty of the state. So factors in the sovereignty of the state are poor illiteracy, people are not learned. When people are not learned, they will be able to be manipulated by those ruling. For example, states that have poor illiteracy, maybe Kenya, South Sudan, Somali, they tend to be controlled by these super states like USA, because they are not developed yet. So for them to develop, they need to beg from the USA, maybe to say, let's say things to do with the foreign aids and many other things. So another factor is that for a state to qualify to be a sovereign state, or the factors that hinders a state to qualify, is also the injustices faced in that state. Maybe, let's say Kenya. In Kenya, back in 2013, we had our governor, Evans Kidero, who was he bribed the judge to know it. So you see, that thing shows that Kenya is not yet sovereign because there is other external forces, maybe to do with money, resources. If you are capable of affording the money, then justice will not work with others, it will work with you. Then another factor, it is let's say, something to do with the quality of the constitution. Because if the constitution is able to protect the citizen, and that is also able to protect the country as a whole, it shows that a state is sovereign. You see that? So, because of time, and I can see some of you have started yawning, I will beg to summarize, then ensure that you go pick the handouts at the copying place. It is CPS 104. Any question?
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color? Okay. It's a tricky question, but my favorite color is white and blue. White and blue, yeah.
I'm asking on sovereignty.
Yeah, can you please ask a question?
You don't explain on inclusivity and
Yeah.
exclusivity.
Yeah, and in fact, that is what I wanted. That shows that I have students who are very, very accurate and active. So, thank you for asking that question. When it comes to inclusivity and exclusivity, first, inclusivity is that state whereby a state is able, like, to coordinate all its citizens as a whole, whereby when it comes to distribution of resources, the state is able to cater for all the citizens without eliminating any citizen. Then when it comes to that other exclusive, is whereby the state is able to make the decision on its own. The decision, exclusive now. The decision. Now it's not internally, but it's also externally. States like US, they cannot influence the decision of the state. Yeah. Any other question for my students?
And you see, like in every country, there
Yeah.
are commissions and also.
Good. I know that.
And
That shows that
also
you are a very good
ambassadors.
student. Yeah.
Ambassadors. Sovereignty does not apply to such.
Oh,
There's a term.
great. That was a pregnant question that we were supposed to record in that point. For sure, my
Sovereignty does
class.
not apply to everybody who stays
Yeah.
in the state.
So, will we please
Like
keep quiet?
ambassadors. The ambassadors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When you get to
Commissions are
Yeah,
people.
when you get to USA embassy in Nairobi, that area itself is not Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So,
So exclusivity.
Oh, so
We-
that's why it doesn't apply to us. There's
Yeah.
no commission was commission, right?
Commission,
Yeah.
there's a British commission.
Oh.
British commission office.
I
The
go.
embassies are not,
Can I
it's
go?
not part of. Yeah.
Can I
Nice,
go?
but that's the
Yeah, that's
question.
a very, very good question. So, when it comes to inclusivity, you can also talk about the things to do with those big commissions such as UN, the organizations, also the ambassadors or embassies. Those places are like they are internal and they are also external. How do I say so? Internally, they protect the state, and externally, they protect the state when it comes to external decisions. I'll go on. When it comes to the embassy, maybe let's take an embassy like the US embassy, the Russian, the Kenyan. When an embassy is on another country's land, it is independent. The decisions, the policies, and the regulation placed by that state do not affect the state or the embassy of the other state. Meaning that the embassy or the land in which the embassy covers, it's a sovereign embassy or a sovereign state on its own. For example, back in 19th century, we see US and Japan, Russia were on fight. So, the Navy, whereby the US were controlling it, were on a sea at the center. And the Israelites were passing using their craft planes. So, the US had to bomb that plane because they were like interfering with the sovereignty of that territory that US is covering. Thank you very much for your question. I like how you were attentive and hope that the next lecture will be as sweet and enjoyable as this one. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.